Hey guys, it's Pete from Airsoft Armourer. Today we are going to be doing a video of how to install the Gorilla MMTW kit into your Wolverine. These kits do fit the Wolverines, the 10-inch, the 14-inch and the 7-inch, tactical, standard and forged. Also the Article 1s. So without further ado, let's get into it. Sweet. So first thing I want to tell you guys is included in the MMTW kit is your board. So this is what detects your trigger movement and your selector movement. And then also in the kit you've got the Gorilla and the Airsoft Armourer logoed adjustable speed trigger for your MTWs and Article 1s. So jumping straight into the build, the first thing we have done is we have removed the old board from the Wolverine, and I'll show you how to do that. It's very simple. Simply take out one pin and the board comes out. So let's get the mag release and get the mag well off to the side for the minute. So these are the two pins that will come out. But the first thing you want to do, you've got a front body pin and a rear body pin. So to access the internal, should we say, the rear body pin, you can just push that through, pull it out the other end, and the Wolverine will fold up. Leave that for the time being. Take out your cable, and now that will give you access to your board, which will be sitting in this gap here. So to remove the board, you may be able to see as well there are two holes which I've just taken the pins out of. The front hole is what holds your trigger board in, and the rear hole is what holds your actual trigger in. So to remove the front pin, you can push it from either side. It's better if you push it from the right hand side through, and as soon as you take that pin out, you can lift the board up, remove the wiring, and that is that board out of place. To get the trigger out, you will see a grub screw on top of the trigger, which is a 1.5mm grub screw. Simply undo that grub screw a couple of turns and the pin will come out, and then you can lift the trigger upwards. So pretty much when we install this board, you'll notice it's the reversal of what we're doing to uninstall the standard mechanical board from Wolverine. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up the kit, lay out everything that we've got, and just have a little talk through about each different component. So guys, once you've opened your packaging and removed all the contents, this is what you should be left with. So going through the parts one by one, you've got the Gorilla MMTW FCU, two O-rings, the selector sort of magnetic plate, your trigger with the trigger magnet on it. Now this one is your horizontal trigger spring tensioner, or your spring, and then you've got three different, should we say, strengths of spring for how sensitive you want your trigger pull to be. So you can feel them. If you pick up the smaller springs, you can definitely feel which one's a bit more. So that would be the strongest one. You can feel them which one's stronger than that would be the medium one, and then this one should be the light one. Yep, so that's the light one. So we're going to go for the medium one for our install, just to see what it's like, and then if we do want a sort of more sensitive or a more stronger trigger pull, we can always install the harder one at a later date, or the softer one. So we're going to go for the medium spring. This spring here, we always need that. Need the trigger, selector, our two O-rings, and the FCU. So we can put these two springs to the side. Right then guys, so since we've got all the springs, all the components we need, just laid them out here, we're just going to go through each one and sort of how they work. So your two springs, you'll see a much larger spring. This is your horizontal sort of trigger alignment spring. This stops the movement from left to right whilst the trigger's in situ in the gun. This spring goes in the bigger hole, and this is where your pin will go through once the trigger's installed. Your smaller spring is for your front tension, and that will go over the front grub screw and lock into place, and they shouldn't fall out just for when you're installing them. So that's that trigger all ready to go. Next, we've got the selector plate. So on the selector plate, there are two magnets. You'll also have a screw which comes already pre-fitted. What you'll want to do is remove the screw just using a small PZ1 Phillips screwdriver, just so it allows us to put this over the selector bar that's in the Wolverine. And then the next things we've got are our two O-rings, if you like. These hold the front pin in place when the trigger board is installed into the rifle. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're now going to separate the upper completely from the lower, and to do that it is the front body pin on the Wolverine. So we're just going to take the upper and lower out, just to make it a lot easier for us installing the gun, installing the board, sorry. And this can be a bit tricky, so bear with us a minute. Okay guys, just give that front bolt a bit of persuasion when you're bringing it out, and then it will come out. And then be very careful when taking the upper and the lower apart. Careful not to snag the engine line, and we can just put that to the side for the time being. So what we'll have, or what you should have by now, is a fully disassembled lower, no electrics in it, no trigger, no nothing. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to install our front body pin and our two O-rings. So this can be very difficult, so the best way of doing this would be to insert the body pin by lining up the O-ring on the body. I'll try my best to keep this on camera, but what you want to do is sort of line that O-ring up on the hole, either using a pair of tweezers or using a small flathead, just to keep it lined up enough for you to poke the body pin through. And all this is doing is keeping this pin in place against the board when it's installed. So like that. Don't know if you can see that in there. So that's the first O-ring, and all that does is keeps that pin from falling out that side. The second O-ring, you don't have to install it. We are going to install the second O-ring just to make sure it's extra secure in there, and whilst it's up against the board, there's no movement on that O-ring. So we're just going to do the exact same. Get the other little O-ring, put that on the body, like so. Don't know if you can see that in there. And then just align the pin with the O-ring. Taking your time to do so, guys. There's no rush on this. Making sure we don't split the O-ring. And then that is what you'll have as a finished product. You should have two O-rings in there with the pin. It should be able to move down, but it should never be able to move the other way. So that's the first major component done. Next, what we're going to install is our trigger, but we're not going to tighten it down. So with the trigger, you'll have your spring, your horizontal spring, and your, let's say, front to rear spring installed. They won't fall out for the install and make it nice and easy. And all we're going to do is slot that down, compressing the spring, the horizontal spring when you install it. Now, if the front pin does get in the way, you can just pull it out a bit, but it shouldn't be too difficult. And then we can line up the hole, line up the spring with the hole, and then we can put our second body pin through. And again, there's no rush for this, guys. You just need to take your time. And the trigger will be installed like that. And you can see that the pin is flush on both sides. Now, on the trigger, there is a front, medium, or front, middle, and rear screw. The front screw is to adjust your complete trigger pull. The middle screw is to attach the trigger to the pin so the pin doesn't move, and then the rear one is to adjust your end stop. We're not going to tighten that middle screw in just yet because we need to install the board, and once the board's installed, that's when we can sort out final alignment. But that is how easy it is to install the trigger. Now, the next thing, you can do it one of two ways. You can install the FCU, you can install the selector, or you can install the line. Now, we're going to install it the best way we feel is possible. However, you do have to have a bit of patience with it. So the next thing we would be installing is the FCU. On the FCU, you will notice that there is a hole at the front, and then there is sort of like an N, the letter N shape cutout, sort of in the middle of the FCU board. The front hole is for your front pin with the two O-rings, and then the letter N, the cutout sort of shape, goes over the trigger pin. So to install it, all we're going to do, bring the front pin out a little bit, drop the board in, and when you align this, you want to make sure that the bolt release is pressed when you put the pin through, just so it doesn't catch on anything. And then we can simply push that pin, the front pin, all the way through, and that is our FCU board installed. Very, very easy there, guys. All I did was drop it in, making sure that the cutout went over the trigger pin, and the front pin went through the board nice and securely. And I don't know if you can see in there, but the two O-rings that we installed earlier are now sitting flush against the FCU board. Not going to cause any issues with the wiring. There's no movement. You can shake this, the FCU board will not move. So now that we've got the FCU board in, we can align the trigger pin, and without the wires being in the way, we can get our 1.5mm Allen key, keeping the trigger pin sort of flush against the body, and we can clamp down that grub screw. It doesn't need to be super tight, guys. You just want a little nip on the pin, and that is the trigger now in place. You can operate the trigger if you want. It won't move on on safe. On semi, you'll have a nice adjustable pull, and the same on full auto. To shorten this pull, you can just simply tune the front screw to your desired position. If you do it too much, you will not be able to save the settings, which we'll come on to later on in the video. Okay guys, so now that we've got the FCU board installed, we are now going to install the upper receiver. You can do this one of two ways. You can install the selector plate first. We are going to install the upper receiver and the airline first, just to make it a lot easier feeding that line through. So like we took it apart, we're going to remove the body pin that's like keeps it locked in. We're going to align the upper and the lower, and then push the pin through, and then that is now attached again. So next job, push the line all the way through. So it's like that, and the end will come out of the grip. So this can be a bit difficult trying to get the selector plate in, but it's a lot easier installing the line first and then the selector. The next part is we are going to be installing the selector plate over the selector bar. So the first thing, a couple of things to sort of be aware about is that there are two magnets on the selector plate, and there is a cutout on the selector where it's flat one side and then it curves round. This will match the profile of the actual selector bar. So to install this, probably easier if I get the mag stands again. To install this, we're going to set the selector position to semi, so semi-automatic, and we are going to carefully feed the selector plates over the selector bar and install it at it's sort of an angle that you install it at, but you need to make sure that it passes the trigger and you don't damage the sensor which is on the board. And all I'd say at this part is be very patient, don't rush it. If you go wrong, you can damage components. All we're going to do is wiggle that till it's in its proper position. There we go. And I don't know if you heard that click, guys, but that's it. Sort of, you install it straight and then at an angle, just so it doesn't contact the selector, or the sensor, should I say. And then once it's installed, we can now make the final adjustments. So the screw that we took out earlier, we now need to install this and apply clamping pressure to the actual selector plate. To do this, we're going to flick it into safe again. And what you'll notice is that the magnet on the right hand side of the selector will be in line with the sensor on the board. You don't want it touching, but you want it to be in line with it. Next, we're going to drop the screw through the hole. Now, it's better if you do have some needle nose pliers for this, or some tweezers, just so you can align the screw nicely, as the magnet will try and fight this. Yep, as it's just done there. But again, patience is the key here. Don't rush anything. It's not a super strong magnet, but it will be enough to sort of put the alignment of the screw off. Might be easier with a magnetic screwdriver bit, actually. So let's just get a magnetic screwdriver bit. There are a couple of things that you will be fighting, like the line as well as the magnet. But there we go, we've got that screw. Oh, we had that screw installed. When you are tightening the screw as well, guys, be very careful, because it is a 3D printed part. You don't need to over tighten it. There we go, that's in. And all we're going to do now is just apply a little bit of clamping pressure, not tighten it all the way because we still need to make final alignment, but just a little bit of clamping pressure. So if you can see in here, I don't know if we can zoom in a bit on the camera, but the magnet should be in line with the sensor, which is this component here. And all we're going to do is make sure that when we're changing it from safe to semi to fully auto, nothing's jumping out of place, and that the magnet is aligned properly. So yeah, we've not aligned that yet, so we need to apply that. We need to apply clamping pressure on that. So let's get a bit more clamping pressure on that, whilst trying to keep the selector plate aligned. And then we're just going to slightly give it a little nip up, and then we can adjust the selector, and then the magnets it'll run nice and smoothly. The magnets will line up with the selector, or the sensor should I say, and we should be able to pull the trigger as well and feel no resistance against that selector plate, which we've got there. Perfect. So that's pretty much the install of the build. When you're routing the wires, you want to make sure that everything is done down the left-hand side of the body, and then you can install the battery and everything into the buffer tube. And then when you close the gun, I'm just going to show you how to close it. It'll push down the wires with the body, and it'll keep everything nicely in place and nice and smooth. But that is how you install the MMTW kit. We're now going to talk you through the FCU settings. So bear with us 1 minute and we'll open up the settings on how to adjust your trigger or set your trigger and your selector positions. Okay guys, so with the FCU and the trigger installed into the the rifle. What you're going to do is you're going to want to connect your HPA battery, head over to your iOS or Android store and download the Gorilla app. It should be Gorilla Airsoft FCU. Once you've downloaded it, you've connected your battery, all we're going to do is press the connect button. It'll automatically search for the board. We're going to click that board and we're going to load up the base settings, which you can switch here. So base Inferno for the Wolverines. It'll load the factory settings that Gorilla has loaded. But what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to set our trigger, set our safe and set our auto, which you can see at the bottom of the screen there. So the very first thing we're going to do is set safe. So put it to your safe position, set safe and press save, and it should successfully do it and pop up with a message. Safe position saved successfully. So that's perfect. We've got that in. Next we're going to do is we're going to flick it to full auto and we're going to set auto. Press save and again we should receive a pop-up message. Full auto position was saved successfully. Now what we can do is we can go back to the safe and we can set our trigger. So put it into safe, pull your trigger as hard as you can and press save with the trigger held. And what we should see there is trigger fire position saved successfully. So now what you'll be able to do is put it to semi or full auto and it'll fire off as you wish. Adjusting the settings up above, such as your semi pop it dwell, delay, auto pop it dwell, auto pop it delay. You can configure a lot of things on the Gorilla app with the FCUs. For example, you can have it locked to DMR if you wish. You could have sniper delay if you want to wait so many seconds after each shot is pulled. You can activate the MMTW empty mag catch and the bolt catch functions. So these are in play if you do want it to be. You can have dual trigger, semi-ramping, and then you've also got the tournament lock. So with the tournament lock, the way that this works is you can choose how many hours you want to lock it for. So we can drag it all the way up to 72 hours if we choose to. And that gun will be locked. You will not be able to mess around with the settings for that many hours. To get out of tournament lock, the battery must be connected up to the amount of hours that you have locked it to. So for example, if you lock it for 24 hours, you will have to have your battery connected for 24 hours before you unlock it, which may cause the gun to be permanently locked in tournament lock. So what we recommend is maximum, when you play a game, lock it for 1 hour, tournament lock it. You won't be able to adjust your settings for that hour. And then to come out of tournament lock, it has its own timer, so it'll register once that hour's been up, pretty much. So a couple of other things you can see here. So you've got your battery, it detects what type of LiPo it is and the battery percentage, estimated rate of fire, total fired BBs we've shot through this, FCU state unlocked, dual trigger ramp, inverted, empty mag catch, bolt catch and LED output. These are all things that you can do with your FCU board. If you make any changes towards the dwell, the delay, every change that you make, you have to press the right button after you make changes. So when you press right, it will say settings written successfully. You can then disconnect the board and that gun is ready to fire, ready to field pretty much. But apart from that, there's nothing else that you need to be made aware of. It's a very, very simple install on the gun. However, we do recommend bringing it to us if you do come across any issues. Right guys, thank you very much for watching our install on the MMTW kit. For any questions or if you require any information, please feel free to get in touch with us either through the YouTube video, we're on Facebook, or you can head over to the website. It's got our contact details on. If you'd like to order one of these, we do have these on the website. They're not a pre-order only, we do stock these and we are expecting more very, very soon. But yeah, apart from that guys, have fun and we'll see you on the next video.